Welcome to R&R Showtime with Robert.
And Ryan.
And today we will be discussing one of Ryan's favorite TV shows. Favorite TV show?
Absolute, no question, hands down favorite TV show.
Bojack Horseman, specifically the first season.
Starting with the first season, I'm quite excited about this. I just think more people need to watch this show. Anybody who has watched this show probably already knows that it's a great show. It's maybe not everybody's favorite show, but it is. God, I just love it. First season, not the best season. In fact, the least best season.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to give a first impression, just to say, so Ryan's told me it's his favorite show, and I hold my brother's opinion of movies and TV shows pretty highly, except for when he told me that Paddington Bear was the best movie that came out the year it came out.
You haven't actually watched the movie I was referring to. The first Paddington movie is a good movie. I wouldn't have put it in my top 10 that year. Paddington 2, on the other hand, was the best movie of that year. Actually, I think it was one of the best movies of that year. And it is notable for being Rotten Tomatoes' highest rated film.
I just can't even believe that. Whatever. Yeah, I do normally trust my brother's recommendations on movies and TV shows. That's why we have a movie and TV show podcast. I think he's got good things to say. But, he told me Bojack Horseman is his favorite TV show. And I was like, well, that just sounds like something I got to watch. Watched about like 2 episodes and was like, what the hell is this? This is unwatchable. And it's the thing is, truly, when I watch anything animated, it does matter how it looks to me. Like, I almost couldn't watch Clone Wars because I thought it was unwatchable for how it looked.
I fully agree with that sentiment. Like, definitely whenever I would see this show, like back when it was like still newish, because I started watching the show after the second season had come out, not too long before the third season came out, because I was just bored on Netflix. And I was like, this is at the point when there were like maybe 10, if not fewer, Netflix original shows. And I'd already watched Orange is the New Black and House of Cards at that point. I was like, this is the other one. This looks like the other notable one. Let me just put it on. And I more or less had the first 2 seasons on in the background. And as it progressed, I felt myself more drawn into it. And I was like, this is a good show. And then the third season came out soon enough after that I went and watched that. And that's really the season where it sort of clicks. Like it becomes the show that it is in the third season. It really establishes there's one episode in particular that we'll get to it when we get to the third season that it's quite important that you watch it. And that you sort of devote attention to it, because it is largely dialogue free. Again, we'll address this at that time, but it's just such a great show.
Yeah. So,
and what a great cast too. I mean, Will Arnett, Aaron Paul, Allison Brie,
and for all the people that don't know actors by names,
I can go through each of them. Will Arnett, you would know from various things. He's in Arrested Development. He's the voice of Lego Batman.
Yeah, I do know who Will Arnett is. He's got a pretty unmissable voice.
Allison Brie, you may know as Annie from Community. She's also she's in things. She's in the show Glow on Netflix, I believe. Mm-hmm. She's a person that if you know her, you know her. Amy Sedaris, I think, is most notable for being in for her show Sex and Candy, but she has like a small role in Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and she appears in a couple episodes of The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm. Still don't know who that is.
She is the person on is it Tatooine? The lady that watches Grogu a couple times.
Got it. Is she Princess what's her face?
Princess Carolyn.
Yeah, Princess Carolyn.
Yeah.
The cat.
Paul F. Tompkins voices Mr. Peanut Butter, which Paul F. Tompkins, I only really know as the guy from Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny who runs the Mike Knight and turns out to be Satan.
Interesting. Yeah, don't know who that is. I cannot think of his face right now. Haven't seen Pick of Destiny in quite a few years. So,
but I mean, arguably the biggest name is Aaron Paul. 2014 Aaron Paul, like fresh off the series finale of Breaking Bad. This is like the next thing one of the next things he signs up for.
Yeah, which is funny because, like, I mean, you'd say, like, I guess in 2014 he was a big deal because he came off of Breaking Bad, and he's done some films and TV shows since then. But like, I don't like put Aaron Paul as like big name. Like he is a big name because he was in one of the greatest TV shows, American TV shows ever made. So, but
that's why I think it's worth noting that the show premiered in 2014, and I'm pretty sure Breaking Bad ended in 2013. Maybe I'm not. Yeah,
probably close enough. Even if you're probably right around there.
So yeah, at that point, Aaron Paul probably could have gotten a lot of roles, and yeah, he got this one, and I think he does a great job as Todd Chavez. But like just like the recurring cast, you get Patton Oswalt as a few characters. Stanley Tucci, I did not know voiced Herb, so I think that's kind of cool. J.K. Simmons, Kristen Shaw, yeah, cool stuff, cool cast. But yeah, we can get into the show. So season 1, I know I myself have said that I didn't really pay close attention to the show when I watched the first season, and I believe you've indicated more or less a similar experience with yourself.
Yeah, so watching this, I tried to watch like those, like 2 episodes and was like, this sucks. Like, I don't know why you like it. And Ryan kept urging me to, like, you got to watch this. So this show's great. He would say it's great. And eventually he said, it's my favorite show ever made. And I was like, okay, I'm really going to try and watch this some more. So I like kind of forced myself to watch it, like, half watched it, like did something else while it was on. And so I was kind of paying attention. I'm getting some of the things, and there's a little bit of stuff that's a little funny sometimes, but is like whatever. And most of the time I'm just like, oh God. So some of this stuff is so dumb. I do appreciate that in this first season. I mean, and it does it throughout, the subtle jokes about like animals and stuff, that, where it's like, they're not even, it's not like, I like that it's subtle. It's not like they're like, lol, it's animals and dogs and whatever. But like, sometimes it's just silly little things. Like birds are the airway conductors at airports and stuff.
A funny joke that sticks in my mind, I think it's from the second episode, is these 2 dogs in a grocery store talking about chocolate, and they're like, oh, I love chocolate so much. Yeah, but it'll kill me. Yeah, I know, but I can't stop eating it.
Yeah, exactly. So there are some little funny kind of like, I don't know, it's not a double entendre, is it? It's ironic things they do that are kind of amusing with the animal stuff.
It's kind of similar in a way to some of the humor of like a Bob's Burgers, where like every episode you see there's like a lot of visual gags in it.
Yeah.
But then there's also like small jokes that like if you get you'll never pick up every joke that is going on in the show the first time you watch it. But like it means that repeat viewing can sometimes be rewarded.
Yeah. So another note, if it has Bob Burger-esque anything, I don't like Bob's Burgers, whatever. So yeah, people probably, I've told people that before, and they're like, oh my God, it's so funny, and it's blah 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 blah. Also find the animation of that to be somewhat unwatchable and not amused by anything. Now, something like Bob's Burgers though, and I just want to say this really quick while I'm talking about Bob's Burgers, is that I barely watched any of them, but the only character that I like is Bob, and a little bit the girl. That's
the pink cat one.
Yeah,
Louise.
And
whose same voice actress also appears in BoJack Horseman.
Yes, I do know.
Kristen Shaw.
She voices the who used to be the youngest kid on Horsing Around that BoJack was on when he was younger.
Back in the 90s, he was in a very famous TV show.
Yeah. But yeah, so the show feels very unwatchable animation-wise, but I push through that. I keep watching episodes. And eventually I got to the episode where it's about Herb. I guess it's Herb is his
Herb Kazaz, yes,
used to be the agent, right?
he wasn't
Or
the
the
agent.
showrunner.
He was the showrunner on Horsing Around.
Right. And the episode where basically it's kind of like he's dying, or Bojack either finds out he has cancer, or it's like, he's on his like deathbed or something.
And he's trying to make amends.
Yeah, and I can't remember exactly what he did wrong. It was something like he sold him out or like voted to have him kicked off or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so he goes to make amends, and basically, he's like, I'm so sorry, gives him like a heartfelt like apology and everything. And then Herb's like, yeah, no, fuck you. Like, I don't forgive you.
I remember because like, again, like when I first watched the show, I was only casually paying attention to everything that was going on. But then like, I like just caught the, oh, I don't forgive you. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting, like, you just don't see that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt the same way where I was like only kind of paying attention to stuff. And when that came up, it was like a real plot line actually as well. And something that just seemed okay. And I was like, okay. And then when he didn't forgive him, it really was just like oh, wow. Huh. And he just like, it was like, yeah, I don't forgive you, Bojack. You did a fucked up thing. And like even if you're apologizing, like apologies, a lot of times apologies are for the benefit of the person, like you're trying to make amends with the person, but it's to make you feel better.
Yeah. And he didn't want to provide that to him because, so, all right. So let's kind of rewind a little bit and let's talk about what this show is. It's about Bojack Horseman, who is a sort of washed up actor living in Hollywood, who was in a really like famous, successful sitcom in the 90s.
Just say
it's Full House. And the basic gist of the show is that he's a horse guy. The basic gist of the sitcom is he's a horse guy who takes care of these 3 human orphans. And the show was like reasonably popular, like in the style of Full House. It ran a lot of seasons. It was successful. Maybe not everybody's favorite show, but for some people was something important.
Were they supposed to be orphans?
Yeah, because there's like a theme song that plays 3 little orphans.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I never paid attention to. I just knew he was on a show and it was about some like kids and him. And, I thought he was like some kind of uncle or just whatever. But yeah, I guess that makes sense. He's a horse guy with orphans.
Yeah, he becomes their father. And that's the gist of that. And so this is basically about his sort of washed up career, like 20 some odd years after the end of the show. And it's just sort of exploring that. And the first season is sort of centered around the plot of him having a book, a memoir written about his life. And at first he tries to do it on his own, but he ends up getting saddled with this ghostwriter, Diane Nguyen, the character played by Allison Brie. And it's sort of, it stays being about the book being written, but it's more like the forging of the friendship between these two and possibly other things as well. So
yeah, and I don't think I paid a specific amount. Like again, later as it goes on, I see that like he likes her and they're this and that, but she's like with Mr. Peanut Butter. And I don't know if that happens during the time that they're together, like if she was already with Mr. Peanut Butter when they met.
They were already together.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Yeah. And so I see now at that Herb episode is when I maybe started paying more attention. I could see by the end, as we, get towards the end of the season, I can see how the show has like more going on. At first, I just didn't give it enough credit. That it was just like, oh, this is like whatever.
I really want to sort of like the first few episodes, the first episode in particular, they have a lot of cutaway gags, which is like just genuinely unusual because those just aren't a thing later in the show. And it really makes rewatching early episodes, it feels different. But as someone who has rewatched the first few episodes many times, because I've sat down to get someone else to watch the show, and so I'm sitting there watching the first episodes multiple times, and I myself, this is probably the only show that I would like gladly sit down and rewatch again anytime it suited me. And yeah, like, so the early episodes aren't great, but let's try and to try and provide some structure, let's go through the basic plot of the episodes. Maybe we'll see how this works, if this works out. So again, first episode, it's basically generally centered around one, establishing who the characters are. We have Bojack Horseman, main character, Diane Nguyen, his ghostwriter for his memoir, Todd Chavez, the voiced by Aaron Paul, the guy who ended up crashing at his place after a party one day and just never left. His Bojack's manager and sometimes girlfriend, Princess Carolyn, voiced by Amy Sedaris, and Mr. Peanut Butter, his Bojack's longtime friendish
rival
thing.
thing. They were both on similar-esque TV shows when at the same time. So
Mr. Peanut Butter's TV show, which
Mr. Peanut Butter's House, I think, right?
Yes, Mr. Peanut Butter's House. It's like a direct ripoff of Bojack's show.
Mm-hmm.
But you get this sort of like recurring, like, you get the sense that Mr. Peanut Butter really likes Bojack and wants to be Bojack's friend because he's a golden retriever and he very much has the personality of a golden retriever.
I will say Mr. Peanut Butter is a character that I actually enjoy. Because it's so funny that he genuinely just seems like a golden retriever man.
Yeah.
So I find that amusing.
In the first and second season, Mr. Peanut Butter was without a doubt my favorite character because he's just so he's just so like likable and lovable, like a freaking dog. But yeah, like, and he you can tell like he looks up in a way to Bojack, like and that he wants to be close friends with Bojack, but like Bojack was very much like annoyed by him, especially because he thinks that like his show was very derivative of his show.
Mm-hmm.
But the first time you see Mr. Peanut Butter, he sees Bojack and he says, "What is this, a crossover episode?" And I just think I think he actually maybe says that joke a couple other times.
Can't confirm he does say that again. I don't know if it's in the second season, which I was supposed to watch it season by season and do this podcast. And in the hope of watching it very quickly, I already am halfway through the second season. So,
which is fine. Yeah.
But going forward, I will wait to watch each season so we can do this podcast with a more, fresh take. But he definitely does. I'm just going to say it. He says it later when they meet the whale guy.
Oh,
or is it? No, it's not a whale guy. It's a hippopotamus.
Oh yeah, I think that's the second season.
Yeah, pretty sure it's second season. But he does. I remember that line because when you said it right there, I was like, oh yeah, he says that when he meets the hippo.
But yeah, so that's basically our cast of characters. So the first episode is largely setting up who these people are, what their relationship to Bojack is, and Diane becoming the ghostwriter for his memoir. Second episode is called Bojack Hates the Troops, and it centers around a plot line of him essentially taking muffins that a Navy SEAL had called dibs on from the store and it becoming a full like news story about him taking these muffins and how he hates the troops.
I mean, clearly yeah. He hates the troops. Like,
and yeah, like honestly, I think that this is just kind of like not a lot happens this episode. It's sort of just like a fun like world. I think this is a very good world building episode, if anything.
Yeah, I feel like this, what I learned from watching the show a lot, especially in this first season, is that like this is like obviously a surreal reality. There's like animal, human, whatever, all that kind of stuff going on. But it's a surreal reality where it genuinely seems like Bojack is like a voice of reason, like a person that is the only person that sees what's actually going on, and everybody is just like living in a strange, like weird, like bubble of how they see things and perceive things. And it's like a direct like I feel like a lot of it is a direct commentary on like
Hollywood
like real life
culture.
Yeah. And he's just like literally like basically being the voice of like us most of the time.
Well,
or maybe not the voice of us, but like he's I don't know, maybe I don't understand the nuance of it yet. But someone says I like Bojack. Most of the things he says, I'm usually like, yeah, like what the f- is going on here?
Yeah, there's a lot to like about Bojack, and a lot of time he does seem like the only person with some common sense in a room, but he's definitely not a perfect character. He's definitely not anyone to aspire to be, and we get to see that later on. But yeah, he definitely this is definitely an interesting episode of like just like sort of focusing on the idea of like Hollywood perspective and news culture, like the fact that it's like a news story that he took someone's muffins. It's just yeah, I don't think I think this is a pretty good episode. Episode 3, Prickly Muffin. This is where we see Sarah Lynn, which is the little girl from his TV show, voiced by Kristen Shaw, who has grown up. 10 years out of the TV show, she had a big pop star career, and she was kind of like one of the biggest things out there. 10 years after that, she's kind of washed up. She's has some like addiction issues. And in this episode, she sort of ends up staying with Bojack because Bojack honestly just kind of feels guilty for not being there for her. And I believe this is also the episode where he has sex with her.
Fascinating. I don't actually particularly remember this episode, to be honest. And oh yeah, I don't think I said this. Is that I watched those first episodes like many months ago, like maybe even last year when I was trying to get through this, and then just recently finished up like the first season and moved into the second season, like within the last week or two. So some of these most recent episodes are pretty fresh, and all these other older ones are I remember the just tidbits and things. I don't even remember the first episode. So.
This actually might not be the episode where he has sex with her, but you get the establishing of her character, like being a child star has not treated her very well, and she's not doing super well anymore. But at the same time, like she is like more successful and has a stronger career than Bojack. But this is him trying to make up for not being a better like role model in her life, and her kind of taking advantage of him like being a doormat as well. So we see like she's not a perfect person either, but maybe he could have helped her to be better. Episode 4, Zoe's and Zelda's. This is largely this is the first Todd focused episode where he's working on this rock opera that he really cares about. And at first, Bojack is being very helpful with him, and he wants Todd to succeed in this. But Todd ends up getting distracted from his opera playing this video game. And so he ends up not being able to fulfill his sort of dream of putting on this rock opera. And it's revealed at the end of the episode that this is because Bojack basically staged Todd finding this game to sabotage his chances of getting the opera happening, because he didn't want Todd to be successful and leave him. Because as much as it annoys him having Todd there, he doesn't want to be alone. And I think this is the first sign of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do actually remember this episode decently well. So, which I think this is like you get like little hints of like who Bojack is, but this is where you get more of a hint that like Bojack. I mean, there's just like more like you really see the idea of like that Bojack like craves not just attention but like acceptance sort of, and that Todd technically does just like accept him. He's just like, yeah, buddy, cool, as long as you let me live on your couch, and like to the point where like he lets a guy live on his couch just so he can feel like valued and
and that's kind of the entire role Todd plays in Bojack's life in a lot of ways. And this honestly is like the closest they come, like really close they come to like fostering some genuine friendship and relationship. But then Bojack ruins it because of his insecurities and not wanting Todd to do better than him potentially. Yeah.
Typical.
But yeah, I think that this is a good more Todd focused episode. Episode 5, Live Fast, Diane Nguyen. This episode, Diane learns that her father has died, and they go to back to Boston, where she's from, to basically be there for the funeral. Bojack tags along. And I actually think that this episode is pretty funny for a funeral centered episode. And it gives a good perspective on Diane's life, because up to this point, Bojack sort of like idealizes her as like this smart intellectual writer type. But like when she's around her family, like they all just sort of like rag on her and just think that she's like the black sheep of the family. Not really the black sheep, because one of her siblings is an actual black sheep.
I'm weak. Yeah, I barely remember that episode. I do remember that black sheep thing now, though.
Yeah, but and I find it funny that it sort of breaks with the stereotype that they're all because Diane is like a Asian I believe Vietnamese character, and so her whole family is, and like Bojack definitely walks into the house with the impression that they're gonna be like a typical like ideal idea of a Vietnamese family, but they're all talking with wicked Boston accents, talking about the Sox game.
How amusing.
Yeah. So much so, like Bojack walks in and he says, does anyone speak English? And one of them says, you're freaking Bojack Horseman from the show, or something like that. And he's like, again, does anyone speak English? But I think this episode is a good one for building the bond between Bojack and Diane as characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't like Diane.
I didn't think you would.
Yeah, just don't. That character does not appeal to me at all. She reminds me of the character from that show from a long time ago that was on like MTV.
I was about to say she kind of has a Daria vibe.
Yep. Didn't like her either. So everybody's like, but we liked her.
I mean, she got her own TV show. She was in Beavis and Butthead first.
Yeah.
But yeah. And this, I think this is I think it's kind of clear that Bojack had a bit of a crush on her before this, but I think this is the first time that it becomes like sort of very clear. But Diane just wants the friendship. Because she's in a relationship with Mr. Peanut Butter. But the events of this episode lead to the events of the next episode, which is our A story is a D story, in which at first Bojack and Mr. Peanut Butter are trying to compete to get Diane's attention, but in the end, Mr. Peanut Butter goes home with Diane. But a drunken Bojack, in an attempt to impress her, steals the D from the Hollywood sign. And this is actually a notable thing in the show, because past this episode, Hollywood is no longer called Hollywood. It is Hollywoo.
Yeah, it's funny. I forgot about this episode, but I did notice that the place kept being called Hollywoo.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I just, because I'd forgotten this, I was just like, oh, whatever. This must have been when it always was called or something.
I actually had the same experience. I forgot the D was stolen. It was not until I rewatched that I was like, oh, that's why they call it Hollywoo.
Yeah. What did he do with the D?
So at first,
he just wanted to give her the D.
At first, because he wakes up to the news of the D being stolen, and he's like, who would do that? And then he looks in his backyard and it's sitting in his pool. And so,
me.
Yeah, and so the episode becomes about him trying to get rid of the D, which he didn't even remember stealing it, but he immediately realizes, oh, D for Diane, because he tried to impress her by stealing a D.
So he could give her the big D.
Yeah.
I just had to make that joke. Sorry, it's funny.
Yeah. And so in an attempt to like try and get away with, like, get rid of the D before anyone finds out he stole it, especially Diane. He doesn't want Diane to know that he did this in a drunken thing, because like that's kind of a lot to do. He ends up getting the help of I think Princess Carolyn, but more importantly, Mr. Peanut Butter, who he basically tries to get some agreement that Bojack's gonna back off of Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter will take care of the D. And by taking care of the D, Mr. Peanut Butter claims the D and says that he's the one that took it for his girlfriend Diane.
Wow. God damn it, Mr. Peanut Butter.
But like, isn't that, and it works. And the story is spun like the news people, because people like Mr. Peanut Butter, they sort of like just rewrite the narrative, and it's not someone stole the D. It's, oh, what a heartfelt gesture, him taking the D. And
taking the D.
And I believe at this point he also proposes marriage to Diane. And so they become engaged.
Oh, they become engaged.
Next episode, Say Anything. This episode is largely centered around the character Princess Carolyn.
Also don't like Princess Carolyn.
Interesting. I think early on, Princess Carolyn is kind of like a whatever character. She is my favorite character though by the end of the series. So I will admit, like in terms of like the animation in this show not being great, I don't think she's an attractive character to look at. The way that like the cat design is done with her. But I think she has a lot of character. So this episode basically is just like a sort of day in the life centered around Princess Carolyn doing her job as like a Hollywood agent. Hollywoo agent. Largely, a lot of the episode is just her trying to like get Bojack some role, like trying to like help Bojack's career, because even though she has a lot of other clients, like for some reason she always feels this need to take care of Bojack. Like she has this affinity for Bojack. They're frequently in relationships, not at this current time. And like even when she tries to like get away from Bojack, like she still ends up trying to take care of him. And so she
tried to get out, but he keeps pulling her right back in.
And so the whole episode is basically focused around like helping Bojack, like doing her career, doing all sorts of stuff. She's a busy lady. And to the point that she gets this role for Bojack, but I believe Bojack has to turn it down. She calls Bojack because Bojack's on... in another timeline, Bojack is off meeting Herb. And so with the meeting with Herb, he turns down the role that she gets for him. And the episode ends kind of like on a sour note, because like all that hard work was kind of for nothing. And she gets a notification on her phone wishing her a happy 40th birthday.
Yeah. And then we find out it was her birthday.
Yeah. And it's just kind of sad. Next episode, The Telescope. We sort of covered the plot of this one. It's him trying to reconcile with Herb Kazaz, the showrunner. Not just the showrunner, but kind of like he got Bojack the role on the show because he liked Bojack. And it's even revealed that maybe he really liked Bojack because Herb was closeted back in the 90s and late 80s when that wasn't a lot less acceptable. But and at some point during the run of the show, when their relationship got a little more rocky than it had been, Herb was caught and arrested for public indecency because he engaged in stuff with a dude in a public, I think it's like a public bathroom. And because of this, there's a lot of pressure for him to be taken off the show, because it's a family show and it's a family network. And at first, Bojack promises to like hold strong with Herb, like because the show's centered around him, so like he has some sway. But then a like upper management person comes to Bojack and tells him to ditch Herb and stay on the show. And that's what Bojack decides to do. And Herb, when he meets back up with Herb, they like sort of like get back into their old like way. Like they get along. They have like a good repertoire together. Like they're because they used to be friends, and so like they're able to joke around and they get along really well, and it's actually kind of nice to watch. But it isn't until Bojack tries to apologize to him that Herb makes it clear, like, I will never forgive you. It's not just that you didn't like it wasn't about the show for him. It's that after Herb got kicked from the show, Bojack didn't reach out to him. It'd been 20 something years, and Bojack did not so much as like try to say hi to him until he found out that Herb was dying.
Yeah, which is kind of fucked.
Yeah. And so it's warranted for him to not forgive him. But yeah, this is like one of those. I think this episode is like really where it becomes this show has some depth to it.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's again, it's where I literally started paying attention.
Yeah. And so where we follow up this episode. Actually, I believe this episode ends with him and Diane talking. He brought Diane along to see Herb, and Bojack kisses her, and she sort of just gets back and gets into the car that they were in and just stays silent. And yeah, because she's not comfortable with that. She's engaged.
Yeah. Sheesh.
And the next episode, Horse Majeure, is largely about Bojack trying to sabotage the wedding. He tries to get Todd's help to sabotage the wedding as well. And meanwhile, Todd is offered a job with Mr. Peanut Butter. And so Todd begins to have a relationship with Mr. Peanut Butter. Meanwhile, Bojack is trying to get Todd to sabotage Mr. Peanut Butter's wedding.
Sabotage.
And in this episode, Todd also finds out that
he sabotages rock opera.
Exactly. And so he doesn't go through with sabotaging the wedding, and he really learned something about Bojack, and the relationship between him and Bojack changes at this point, and he gets this closer friendship with Mr. Peanut Butter, leading into the next episode, One Trick Pony, in which a movie is being filmed about Mr. Peanut Butter's
his life.
Yeah.
It's a biopic, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, it's largely it's around the taking of the D. It's basically a movie about the D being taken. Mm-hmm. And Bojack gets the role of Mr. Peanut Butter, and the role of Bojack is played by Wallace Shawn, who you may know as the inconceivable guy from Princess Bride, or the dinosaur from Toy Story.
Yeah, this is one of those episodes where, like, I know Bojack's done a bunch of shitty things and stuff, but it's like one of those episodes where I'm just watching Bojack be like the voice of reason, where it's like, one, why is Bojack not playing himself in a movie where he's in it? Yeah, why isn't Mr. Peanut Butter playing himself in this movie? What?
Because it's a movie.
Yeah, sure, I guess the two actors don't play themselves in a movie about themselves. But yeah, this is one I do remember pretty well, because these couple episodes, like, I kept having to rewatch them because, like, I would get distracted and then I just restart the whole thing and stuff. So yeah, I remember this one pretty well. And this is one where, like, Todd ends up, like, derailing the entire thing because he talks to the director.
The movie's being directed by Quentin Tarantula.
Yeah.
There's a lot of animal pun celebrity names.
Yeah, and he just thinks that everything that Todd says is amazing, and Todd keeps giving these suggestions, and it doesn't even seem like Todd is actually doing it to sabotage Bojack, but like inadvertently sabotages Bojack as this role in the movie by, like, making his role basically end up being nothing. Like,
at the end, the movie is turned into a curated,
a bi-monthly curated snack box.
Exactly. And yeah, like, sort of ruining this, like, movie that Bojack was going to be in. But, like, and it is made clear that Todd while it seems like Todd was doing it to ruin Bojack, it is made clear, like at the end, that Todd was not trying to do that. It just sort of happened that way. But and Todd's not afraid to be honest with Bojack, like, hey, dude, like I didn't mean that, but you sabotaged my rock opera, and he sort of confronts him about it.
Yep.
And in this episode as well, we get the Diane has finished her rough draft of the memoir, and when Bojack reads it, he kind of hates it because he doesn't want to be confronted with himself.
Yeah, and I mean, what we understand about it is that it's very good. Essentially, it's actually very accurate. And that's why Bojack hates it. He wants, a book written about him to be like, I'm the best and I'm amazing, and everybody.
Yeah, he wanted a fluff piece. He wanted it to reflect him well. But
this actually like bears his soul, and it like shows a lot about him and why he is how he is, and just all these things. It's actually a well-written book, essentially. Like it does what it's supposed to do, and he just doesn't like it.
I believe throughout the season, we start to get the indications that Bojack did not have a great life growing up, and he has a lot of parental issues. His mom was not very loving at all. Both of his parents were like not. They did not have a loving marriage. It's indicated, and
I don't know if
there is some alcohol abuse.
I don't know if it's then or if it's happened anytime sooner, but there definitely start to be flashbacks.
Yeah,
it might be like right in this moment or in the next episode.
There are flashbacks, I think, throughout the first season. I mean, there's flashbacks throughout the show. It's kind of hard to pin down when certain information is revealed, especially for me knowing later information. But I think at this point it's established that he didn't have a great family life.
Yeah.
But and so that's part of the reason why he is the way he is. But you get the sense in this episode, not only is he upset to have the world know that, but he's upset that that's the way that Diane perceived him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, he just think he likes her so much, he would hope that she would like see him in a really great light, and it makes it out to be like she just sees him as like a broken, like person, and he doesn't want to feel that way.
The name of the episode is One Trick Pony, and I think that may have been
the title of the book. I think
the prototype title of the book.
Yeah,
but and so Bojack's trying to like, hey, this book's not coming out. It's not happening. I don't want this. But at the end of the episode, she leaks some teasers of the book on BuzzFeed, and it starts to get buzz around it. People are like,
the reception is great.
Yeah, people are interested in it.
And his publisher is literally like, we are going to go out of business if we don't print this book.
Yeah, and he fires her.
Oh, hilariously, Penguin publisher. Yeah.
Yeah, Penguin Publishing, Penguin, voiced by Patton Oswalt. Gotta love him. Yeah, so
with the next episode, if I remember, is when Bojack basically says, we're not printing this book, I'm gonna write my book, and they're like, well, we have to do this in like the next 3 days or something. He's like, I will write an amazing book in 3 days. So him and
Sarah Lynn and Todd
are basically do a bunch of drugs and try to write the book in 3 days, and there's like it's like amusing, and they're like basically freaking out, and he has like a crazy drug trip where we get like a little bit of like even confronting some inner demons kind of moments, and then he just ends up waking up like literally the day of when he's supposed to have the book ready, and he basically wrote a bunch of gibberish and he had nothing ready, so he was just like right there. And part of that, like the revelations he kind of has during his drug trip, make him just be like, go ahead and print the book.
Yeah, well, yeah. And so if Bojack did not have Sarah Lynn in that previous episode I mentioned, he definitely has sex with her here, because there's a point where like he sort of like drags Todd into the sex. He doesn't actually participate, but like it's like this, oh no, I'm getting caught up in it. Oh.
Yeah, it must have been in that older episode, because it did not happen in that drug episode.
But yeah, so
in that episode, in fact, they all try to kill each other. Amusingly, they're like, this will make it better. I'll just cut you. Like they'll just get like like they're literally basically gonna attack each other, and then they're like, that kind of got out of hand, guys.
The other thing that's notable in the drug trip, besides like a lot of the visuals of the episode, is that we see a character, Charlotte, who is featured in the herb centered episode as one of his old friends back in the 80s, before Horsing Around was a show. Him, Bojack, Herb, and Charlotte were just sort of like three friends. In fact, Herb and Charlotte were dating each other. But then Charlotte decides, like right before Horsing Around becomes a thing, Charlotte decides that she wants to leave LA because she thinks it's kind of like a toxic pit, and she decides to move to Maine. And at this time, you just sort of see it as like a thing, like, oh yeah, this girl went off to Maine, and you don't think a lot of it. But during his drug trip, Bojack basically has this hallucination of a life he lived where he went off to Maine with Charlotte, and they had a life together, and they had a kid together. And yeah, it's honestly kind of like a touching scene to like see him like interacting with this imaginary child that he never had.
Yeah. And it's just like the path not traveled kind of thing, or a regret, like something I could have done this instead of being where I am now. Like I became a star and I was rich and everything, but I still don't feel loved or fulfilled. I haven't done anything like that. And it's just kind of a interesting insight. Yeah. This is where I'm seeing some of these things, like as I'm watching, and like didn't take the show very seriously in the beginning. The Herb episode really got to me. Even like some of the stuff still was like, okay, whatever. Some of the stuff's so stupid. It's hard to even look at the story that's going on here. But this is another one where you're watching this part, and it definitely made me be like, wow, this is some deep shit.
This also starts the trend of the second to last episode of every season being like some like notable episode. Like and that very much carries on throughout the entire show. Like it's sort of like the climax before the somewhat resolution of the next episode, and
it's a climax right before we finish.
Yeah. And so like and so it's not always like a drug trip episode. Like the next season, you haven't gotten there yet. You may start watching the episode and you're not really sure what makes it so special, but it's definitely you'll start that episode and see that it is a very different episode from the show going on, and then something happens, and then the third season again, it's another. Yeah, you get the point.
Right.
Stuff happens in the penultimate episode of each season.
That is good to keep in mind. Damn it, use the penultimate word. I was hoping I could get the drop in. What a great vocab term there, people. Penultimate. It means right before the last.
I've learned that from a series of unfortunate events, I believe.
Same.
But yeah, so Bojack, after his drug trip, finds Diane speaking at this convention, and he apologizes to her.
Oh my God, the name of that convention, or it was a Ghost Riders convention where there were barely any. So I'm thinking of a different convention, but that one was
it's a Ghost Rider convention.
Yeah, but no, I'm thinking of it. I'm just thinking of it. At first, I was going to say the name of it, but in season 2, they go to a convention that is just stupidly named, almost amusingly dumbly named for her birthday. But yeah, it's a Ghost Riders convention. And there's nobody there, and nobody knows who they are because of their Ghost Riders.
It's a Ghost Rider, yeah. But yeah, so Bojack shows up and he apologizes to Diane and he agrees to print the memoir. The final episode of the season, 3 months after the memoir is released, Bojack is doing great. Like the memoir came out and it kind of put his name back on the map. And despite his older age, he's even being considered for the movie role he's kind of dreamed of playing his entire life as an actor, Secretariat.
Yeah, in fact, he demands it. He's the one that says, we need to film Secretariat. I'm ready to do this.
This is his last chance to try and get this done. He has the sway right now. He's a little older. He's a little old to be playing the role, but like this is his personal hero, Secretariat, and he wants to play this role.
Yeah. Secretariat, voiced by John Krasinski.
Yes, it is.
Yep. Unmistakably, I was like, oh yeah, please give me more of this.
And you do get some more Secretariat, but I mean, the character is dead in the show.
Yeah, so there are flashbacks, but it's not really that many or that often. But yeah, it's And this episode does start with a flashback of Secretariat, and in fact, it's like
I think it's him on a TV show answering like some like fan mail question
that
from
Bojack
young
sent in.
Bojack.
Yeah, and it's like the beginning of it, and he's answering it and stuff, and then it literally shows like later how like he gives us advice, but then later it's like completely disgraced because he was using like
he
drugs to
alleged of using performance enhancing drugs, and then it show him killing himself?
I think he kills himself. Yeah,
in that
jumps off a bridge.
Yep, which
pretty wild. Yeah,
and that's kind of an important thing to remember.
Yeah, but that's how it's like we see that, and then but yeah, Bojack is like, I'm here. This is it. Like, let's do Secretariat. And at first, they're not going to even give it to Bojack. They are like, hey, we know that you came in here and wanted to do this, but we need to give it to, God, I can't remember, like Tobey Maguire or something like that. they were like, well, we can't say no to Tobey Maguire. And it might not be Tobey Maguire, but it was some like, sort of like a name that people would recognize. And like, well, we can't say, or Topher Grace even. I don't know.
It may have been, yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, yeah.
Which I get both of those people mixed up. But they say something like that, and then for some reason they can't do the movie, so they come and they ask.
It's funny you
Bojack.
would get Spider-Man and Venom mixed up.
Yeah, I don't know why I get them mixed up. It's maybe something to do with their names and that they were in that movie together. But
but in the end, he gets the movie and he gets cast, and that sort of sets up season 2, him filming Secretariat. Meanwhile, Diane has married Mr. Peanut Butter, and their relationship's gonna be something. Mm-hmm. Todd and Mr. Peanut Butter are going into another business together, and we see their friendships begin to be fostered. Mm-hmm. I can't remember much of Princess Carolyn's situation.
She starts dating a something.
Oh my God!
Yeah, something Mr. McMahon or whatever. I can't remember what his name is.
Vincent Adult Man.
Yeah, Vincent Adult Man, who has 3 kids in a trench coat, and only Bojack points it out multiple times. He's like, "That's just 3 kids in a trench coat. Like, how do you not know that that's 3 kids in a trench coat?" And nobody else knows. This is another one where I'm just like, "What?" Like, I'm so very Bojack in this moment. I'm just like, it's 3 kids in a trench coat. What is wrong with everybody? Like,
but I love Vincent Adult Man as a character. Like, it is one of those just so ridiculous things. Mm-hmm. And like, he doesn't last the entirety of the show. And he does kind of feel like something of the early seasons, because like they do like ridiculous stuff later on, but nothing quite as ridiculous as the 3 kids standing on top of each other in a trench coat.
Yeah, that keeps going on. That keeps being a feature of a bunch of episodes going into season 2, I can say.
Yeah.
And it is actually still pretty amusing. I definitely do get a chuckle out of it.
So what do you do for work, Vincent? Business?
Business. I'm a businessman that works at the business office.
Yeah, I did a business.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those. It is kind of stupid, but I find it quite amusing. But yeah, and her life is going on with her agency. Yeah.
Yeah, so cool. That's the end of the first season. Before we started this podcast, Ryan had asked me to think about who my favorite characters were, and how they have changed for him over time. So I'll say here, as far as this first season was going, I barely was like even very into it. So having to pick a favorite character during that time, I would say it's probably Bojack, just because there's something about like the ridiculousness of the show sort of was like in some ways funny, but in some ways almost off-putting. But his voice of reason moments make me like feel more okay with it, I think, somehow. And I like that. And so that's something like I can more connected with him or enjoyed him more. Plus, he obviously is like the main character, but that's not everything. He's shown some nuance and things. So he was interesting to watch.
I believe he is largely regarded as the best character on the show, like most people's favorite character. Yeah, because he just has a lot of depth, even though he in many ways has a very an anti-hero quality to him. And you get aspects of that in this season. He does other stuff later on that sort of more cements that status for him.
Mm-hmm.
But
and then so I would say if there's like a second place, it's probably Mr. Peanut Butter, just because I like him because he's basically a dog. And he's just a nice guy. And there's something even also, it's just like a foil to who Bojack is, where he's just a constantly nice. I mean, and that's
in the first season, he is fully, his entire character is to be a foil to Mr. Peanut, to Bojack. And later on, he becomes more of his own character.
Yeah. And so I do find that enjoyable. I did like it. It was kind of funny. And just like a breath of fresh air in the show. Like, he's ridiculous too, but his ridiculousness makes sense. He's a dog, and he's supposed to be how he is.
Can I just say, like, Mr. Peanut Butter was my favorite character for the first 2 seasons, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that his name is Mr. Peanut Butter, and like, even now, I just find it delightful that because he's a dog, his first name is Mr.
Yeah.
And his last name is Peanut Butter.
Yeah, which, I mean, it reminds me of like Princess Carolyn. Her name is Princess Carolyn because she's a cat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, they're the only two that I could really actually say I like in the first season. Everybody else I find to be just like...
Yeah, you say you don't really like Princess
stupid,
Caroline,
annoying,
and you don't like Diane.
Yeah,
and
like
then,
I dislike them. Their characters annoy me a little bit.
And then Todd, I guess, would be your sort of ambivalent.
Yeah, he's actually kind of amusing too. Like if I put him somewhere in there, he's
he'd be the middle of the 5.
Yeah, he's like yeah, I guess they're all the main characters, right?
This is the main cast of 5. Yeah.
Yeah, so Todd's definitely in the middle. I definitely am. He's kind of funny. He serves his purpose. I just didn't very much like him necessarily. He was kind of, in some ways, he was also kind of just annoying. So
it's funny that you identify Bojack as the voice of reason, where in many ways Diane is also pegged as a voice of reason. But
Diane, yes, you are right about that. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't like something about her.
And I kind of get that. Like, if I
put Diane above Princess Carolyn, so
fair. I mean, kind of fair. Like, even I, going back through the season, it's kind of hard to remember what Princess Carolyn is doing because most of her life is just centered around helping Bojack. And that's not very, it doesn't build your own self.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll have more to talk about later on.
I found the Penguin publisher to be kind of like amusing, like not a main character, honorable, like he was funny. Like his life was like, he was like, we're going out of business. That was kind of funny and stuff. So
yeah, I think you can attribute at least some of that to the fact that Patton Oswalt is just a funny guy.
Yeah.
Funny to listen to. And you don't get a ton of Sarah Lynn this season, but she's a likable character. I like Kristen Shaw in anything. But yeah, like, I don't know if we'll follow the same format for the other seasons, because in recounting some of those episodes, I love this show, but I don't have a universal knowledge of everything that happens in the episodes.
Yeah.
And I was having to sort of read stuff. So I think if we just sort of try and follow the character arcs going forward, that may be a better action plan going forward. But yeah,
perhaps.
If you got into the end of this and you haven't watched the show, please go watch it. I know the first season's not that great. When I go back to it, I really just see it as a setup, and that's what it is. It establishes these characters. But
now that I have watched some of the second season, I basically understand that a little too. It definitely is a lot of like setting up. Like the first half of the show is basically setting up. So yeah. Which is not, that's not as entertaining. So
if you go on to the season's Wikipedia page, you'll see that the show got mixed reviews, and that's largely because a lot of the critics watched the first half of the season and gave it meh reviews.
Yeah,
but people who watched the second half started to understand what the show was going for.
Yeah, but it looks like we're out of time, folks. So
yeah,
until season 2, until next time. This has been Robert.
And Ryan.
Have a good one.
Back in the 90s, I was in a very famous TV show.